Everybody's Charles, your hobby hero, and we have got a video jam-packed with spoilers today. There have been so many cards announced in the last several days that instead of making individual videos for them, I'm going to combine all of them into this video here. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button down in the bottom corner. I do appreciate it. I do put out regular content about the hobbies that I love the most, with this channel being dedicated to the card games that I play. Now we have 12 spoilers that we're going to get into today, varying from several different announcements. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and hop right in, and I will let you know there are some absolute bangers for reveals today. Alright, the first ones we're going to hop into were 5 songs that were actually spoiled on ICV. We have the very first one here is Be Prepared for Ruby. It is a 7-drop uninkable song that can be sung by a character with 7 cost or more, and it banishes all characters. Now we finally have the Wrath spell that we've been looking for. I'm excited to see what this deck or this card's potential really is. It's pretty high up there for a Wrath spell, unless we have a singer that's not been revealed yet that can sing up to 7 cost cards. If that happens, this could be more viable at that point in time. I don't know that Ruby right now has a color combination that can recover any faster, particularly late game, than another one, and at 7 it would make this very, very difficult to play this and another character behind it to have kind of a jump start on your opponent. So with what we have revealed currently, pretty cool on this card, but it could get more support in future sets, and I'm glad we have access to a Wrath finally, at least in that sense. Now the next one up is one of my favorite songs from Disney and probably one of the hottest cards in this reveal, and that is A Whole New World. Now this is a 5-drop uninkable card for Steel that allows each player to discard their hand and then draw 7 additional cards. Now we've seen a lot of low cost cards in Steel that can generate a really quick board control and board presence. This is a great way for that Steel deck to refill its hand afterwards. Not to mention, if there is like a mid-range or control-esque deck that is in the format, this forces them to flush any strategies that they had in their hand and refill up to a new hand. Now obviously it's most advantageous if you have fewer cards in your hand than your opponent. If the format starting out is just full of really aggressive decks, this card may not see play right away. The fact that we have that shift Tinkerbell that can sing this card on turn 4 also gives a little bit of edge, but I like this option here, especially like I said, with Steel wanting to throw a lot of little stuff down at the beginning and really kind of topping out in that 4 to 5 range. This is an excellent way, once you've dumped all that stuff, to refill your hand. Now, not being inkable is going to limit the number of copies of this deck that you're going to this card that you're going to want to have in your deck, but I really like this card. If not for set 1 meta, I think this is a card that will definitely see some play going forward. Alright, now our next song up is Mother Knows Best for Emerald. This is a 3-drop uninkable song that allows you to return a chosen character to that player's hand. Now in a vacuum, I'm not real keen on this card. We've seen a number of bounce cards in Emerald though, so there could be a tempo-esque deck that emerges. This also allows you to bounce your own character if you do have a character that you already quested with, but you really want to make sure it's protected. You could return it to your hand so that you can either replay it that turn or on a future turn. That's a pretty big loss in tempo from what we've seen so far of gameplay. Could it be a strategy going forward? Absolutely. As of right now, not a huge fan of this card, but it absolutely could emerge as a centerpiece for a deck. Again, not being inkable does kind of limit its ability to be 4 of in a lot of decks, but it's always going to have a target, which is nice, so it'll never be a completely dead card in your hand. Alright, next card we have up is a song for Amethyst. We have Reflection, which is a 1-drop inkable song where you look at the top 3 cards of your deck and you put them back on top of your deck in any order. It's unfortunately missing the most important text on this card, which is draw a card. Without that, this doesn't really seem like it deserves a spot in most decks. Information is not worthless. So being able to manipulate your draws is not bad, but in a constructed format, to allot a spot just to kind of tinker with the top 3 cards, probably not worth it. Now, if we do see a dedicated song deck that's just really hungry for additional songs, this could make the cut since it only takes 1 to cast. The fact that it's inkable is nice. Could just be that kind of foundation card you need in the deck. I also don't really understand the song aspect of this card. I would never see myself in a situation where I would want to exhaust any character that I had to save myself 1 ink. Just seems like it would always make more sense to either challenge with that character or to generate lore with that character. 1 ink really shouldn't be a tempo swing in any particular direction. Like I said, could I be wrong about this card? Possibly. I don't think I will be. The ability for it to be a top performer is very small. To be a role player in a very song dedicated deck, it may end up being that. Alright, and the last spoiler for the ICV spoiler is Hakuna Matata. This is a 4-drop inkable song where you can remove up to 3 damage from each of your characters. Now, I really like this card if the Musketeer decks take off. This is a great way with all that pumped up back end that we see in the Musketeers and all of those defenders to have a clear reset from this card. Now, at 4, you're probably not going to want a ton of copies of this in your deck. It is inkable, which is nice. It'll never be a dead card in your hand, but this could absolutely just change the course of a game. If you've been blocking with bodyguards here and there, and then you'd be able to play this and just completely reset your health across the board, could absolutely swing the game in your favor. If that deck is around, I think we'll probably see a few copies of this card in it. Alright, next card up is an item. I've not been real big on items, and this one is no exception. This one is a Stolen Scimitar. It is a 2-drop for Emerald that is inkable with the ability to slash, which you exhaust you exhaust the item, and a chosen character gets +1 strength this turn. If it's an Aladdin character, he gets +2 strength instead. I cannot think of any reason why you would ever play this card into anything other than your Inkwell. Playing 2 for an effect as minimal as +1 strength, even if it's reoccurring every turn, is just bad. +2 really isn't that much of a difference breaker, and that's only on Aladdins, which the best Aladdins we've seen so far are in red. So now you're already color locked just for this effect. I don't foresee this card being good. I don't even really foresee a scenario where this card could be good unless there was just some weird power threshold that needed to be met for some unrevealed card. I don't know. Feel free to put in the comment section below if you figured out some tech with this one. But this is kind of one of those weird cards that I don't understand its production value. I don't think it's good in limited. I don't think it's good in constructed. I think the only saving grace of this card is that it is inkable. If you're in a limited format, you have something to put into your inkwell. Alright, the next ones up are 2 reveals at the same time. They were revealed for Emerald, both of these cards. We have first Mickey Mouse, the Artful Rogue, which is a 7-drop uninkable with 6 strength, 5 willpower, and 2 lore generation. He has shift 5, which means he can take another Mickey that is in play and come into play on turn 5. But his other ability is the big one here. That's misdirection. Whenever you play an action, you choose an opposing character, and that character cannot quest their next turn. Now, this character, at first glance, feels pretty underwhelming. And honestly, it's all going to hinge on that shift 5. If there is a legitimate way to build this deck without just forcing a bunch of Mickeys in there for the sake of shift, to get him in play on turn 5, his misdirection ability is huge. Actions right now are so expensive, especially actions that deal with individual characters as just a flat removal spell. This basically allows every one of your actions to do double work, which is an insane value to come from one card. And if this is coming in on turn 5, that is a very early curve to be having your actions do double work. His stats aren't bad either for that 5-drop spot. The fact that he can come in and shut down 2 characters potentially on turn 5. He could sing a song, which that action would shut down a character plus the effect of a song. Or he could be generating lore. 2 lore generations, not bad. He's got a big enough body to deter people from swinging back into him just haphazardly as well. At 7 and not being inkable, I don't know how many copies of this card you can include unless you're playing enough Mickeys to where this guy is always a 5-drop. You definitely don't want these to get clogged up in your hand. I like this card, but it is conditional based on what kind of deck can be built with him. But we're only in set 1. This is a card. There's going to be more Mickey Mouses come out in the future. So even if there's not the right Mickey Mouse support to get him out on turn 5, I think long term this card's still a good card to have. Now, the other card, the Action Do It Again here, is a 3-drop uninkable where you return an action card from your discard pile to your hand. I do not like this card. The actions, again, as we just stated, are fairly expensive. The value for playing an action is almost always outweighed by the value of playing another character, except in extremely situational scenarios. So for me to sit there and take a turn to pay 3 to get an action back that is already probably less value than just playing another character from my hand, I really just don't like that. The fact that it's not inkable is the absolute nail in the coffin for this card for me. I just don't like having conditional uninkable cards in my deck, because there are going to be a number of times when this card doesn't have a real valid target and you can't ink it. So it is literally just going to be a dead card in your hand. I do not like that. I don't recommend deck building with that in mind, and I don't recommend building around a card like this to make sure it always has live cards, because it really isn't that powerful of an effect. Now, in future sets, could we get some really, really good actions that you want to have more than 4 copies of in a deck, and this card becomes the ability to have copies number 5 or 6 of that card? Absolutely. I haven't seen it right now, and based on the power level of the set 1 actions we've seen so far, I don't think there's anything left to be revealed in set 1 that would change my opinion on this particular card. All right, next one up is another action for Emerald, and this one's going to get you right in the feels. This is Vicious Betrayal, which is a 1-drop inkable action where a chosen character gets +2 strength this turn. If it's a villain character, they get +3 strength instead. This is the giant growth equivalent for this game. I think this card will be good set 1. Just like we see in Magic the Gathering, giant growth in a very limited format can do a lot of work. If you're challenging, this allows you to challenge up far bigger than your character's base, especially if you're already playing challengers in your deck. You can trade with your 1-drop all the way up to probably most of the 5 and 6 drops that are getting played in this game with the cost of just this card. I really do like this particular card. The fact that it's inkable means that it will never be a dead card, but you've always got situations where this is probably going to be viable. Unless you're playing a deck that never challenges, there's almost always going to be a way for you to generate really good value out of this card, keeping one of your characters on the board or being able to challenge wider because you have this card in your hand. I really do like it. I think it's going to find a spot in most Emerald aggro decks, unless they move to a more control build, which I don't really see the support for that yet. But this card, I think, will be a centerpiece. And like I said, being inkable, you can have 4 of pretty much risk-free in your Emerald builds. All right, next one up, and another steel card that I'm super excited about. I promise you, I didn't start out as a steel fanboy, but these latest reveals have really started to win me over. We have Hans, 13th in line, which is a 4-drop inkable, 3 strength, 3 willpower, 2 lore generator, with the ability Stage a Little Accident. Whenever this character quests, you may deal 1 damage to a chosen character. So this guy's stats are not bad for a 4-drop. Already out of the door, pretty standard stats. He really didn't get knocked down stats wise. to have his ability, and his ability is really good. While you're questing, which is how you win this game, he has the ability to be damaging your opponent's characters and helping you control the board, which is also good and also feeds right into what Steel is trying to do. You play this guy on turn 4, on turn 5, you're going to ping one guy for 1. If you have a fire the cannons or any of the other numbers of ways to direct damage their opponent's characters, this guy can help pick off and finish off those higher toughness characters while advancing your win condition. And again, he's inkable, so there's no risk for running 4 copies of this guy in your deck. I think this guy is going to be a staple in all Steel decks that are being played, as there's really no reason not to. 2 lore generation at 4 is fine. Solid stats, good body, and inkable. Guy checks all the boxes. Big fan of Hans. Unfortunately, not a fan of him in the movie, but here in the card game, it's a really strong card. All right, next up is Flynn Rider for Emerald. He is a 2-drop inkable, 1 strength, 2 willpower, and 2 lore generation character with an ability. Here comes the Smolder. Whenever this character is challenged, the challenging player chooses and discards a card. Again, a 2-drop with 2 lore generation is not bad. The fact that he is inkable, really no negatives to having multiple copies of this card in your deck. And then the fact that card management and hand size is such a valuable asset in this game. The fact that they're going to want to get rid of him because he's a 2 lore generator, they're going to have to drop a card and probably take some damage on their challenger this early in the game as well. Big fan of this card. It's not the removal they needed to see, and the one thing I don't like is that green has really kind of paired itself with a lot of bounce, so you're giving them more cards while this guy's trying to knock their hand down. You never want to really give your opponent more options to be discarding cards. I think this guy is solid. I think this guy is good. He's one of my favorite green cards that have been revealed so far. I think if I'm playing Emerald, it's going to be more focused on a build with him in it than it would be with some of the other cards that are out there right now. That brings us to our last reveal today, and that is Rapunzel, gifted with healing. She is a 4-drop inkable for Amber for 1 strength and 5 willpower and 2 lore generation. She has the ability Gleam and Glow. When you play this character, you can remove up to 3 damage from one of your characters, but then you draw a card for each 1 damage healed. Now, we were just talking about how valuable card advantage in your hand was in this game, and she has the ability to come in and draw up to 3 cards with her ability, not to mention potentially saving a very valuable character. Now, Amber's got a lot of high willpower characters, especially in like your Musketeer builds with your bodyguard characters that are all kind of in line with that as well. So for her to come in, be able to save a character and potentially draw 3 cards is absolutely nuts. It is worthy of the legendary spot that this card is in. The fact that she is inkable means there's absolutely no penalty to playing several copies of this in your deck. Really love this card. It's made me excited for Amber again, and I hope that this is an archetype that will be around, because I really think the bodyguard aspect is super cool. And prior to this card, I didn't know if it had quite enough support yet. I think with this card, I think it's going to be a viable deck that is going to be a real contender with all the steel dealing damage and little bits of damage. For her to come in and be able to erase that and replenish your hand is a really nice effect. So those are the cards that I have for you guys today. Make sure you guys take the time to let me know in the comment section below what your favorite cards are, what you're excited for, and if you think I missed any potential for any of the cards we reviewed today, I would love to hear your feedback as well. Until next time, guys, Hobby Hero out.